Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our Indigenous Peoples Day Spotlight on our alumni. We're calling this Native After Virginia Tech, and we're just going to take some time to catch up with our Native and Indigenous alum. My name is Melissa Faircloth. I serve as the Director for the American Indian and Indigenous Community Center.
My name is Latanya Walker. I am the Director of Alumni Relations for Diversity and Inclusion at Virginia Tech. And we hope today to not only catch up with a few of our Native alum and learn about what they're doing, but also to talk about how college prepares them for their roles, what words of advice they might have for current and future students, and their thoughts on staying engaged with Virginia Tech as alumni. To start, we have Kaylin Stewart, class of 2018, who received her BS in agricultural sciences and minors, in agricultural sciences, and her minor is let me do that over. We'll start with Kaylin Stewart, class of 2018, who earned her Bachelor of Science in Agricultural Science. Her minor is in Agriculture and Applied Economics and Civic Agriculture and Food Systems. She is the co-founder of Virginia Tech's very first powwow. Jason Chavez, class of 2019 and class of 2020, he earned his Bachelor of Science in Political Science and his Master of Arts in Political Science. Jason has been an active member of Native at VT. He was vice president his last year here, or 2 years. All right. And he was a leading advocate for Indigenous Peoples Day. Next, we have Rufus Elliott, who is class of 2007, and he received his Bachelor of Science in History. Rufus is also our very first Monacan graduate at Virginia Tech. Finally, we have Lee Lovelace, class of 2009, who received his Bachelor of Science in Marketing Management. And he is the founder of the group Native at Virginia Tech, and that's a student organization. So thank you all so much for being here and for taking the time to talk with us. I really appreciate it. And I know that alumni, usually have some very good advice for students. I think our students very often just want to chat with alumni and hear about their experiences during and after college. And so I'm just going to jump right in with Lee. And Lee, I know you're currently serving both admissions and recruiting prospective students from Virginia's tribal communities in a liaison capacity. Can you tell us a little bit more about some of those initiatives and what has that looked like in the past few years?
Sure. So just to give some background information, during my final year at Virginia Tech, I served as the president of Native at VT, the student organization at Tech. And shortly after graduating, I actually did not have a job lined up after graduation. And I was approached by a few staff people at Virginia Tech to see if I was interested in providing leadership to a pre-college initiative specifically for Virginia Indian students. So Virginia Tech had just been awarded this grant that was specifically designed to bring college resources and information to the tribes. And so with me being a member of a Virginia tribe, I'm a member of the Upper Mattaponi tribe. I saw it as an opportunity for me to gain some professional experience and to also give back to my own communities. So in that first year, we traveled to all the powwows in Virginia. We set up tables of college information. I traveled to each one, and we also had other staff from Virginia Tech attend. And we also hosted two college workshops directly at the tribal centers. And with these workshops, we covered a range of topics, including admissions, how to write a good essay on your admissions application, all the details and the deadlines for financial aid and where to look for specifically for scholarships. At that time, it was a particular challenge back in 2009 because the Virginia tribes were still fighting for federal recognition, which has since been granted to the tribes. But after that first season of the pre-college initiative, it's I guess your pilot year, you could call it,
Mhm.
Virginia Tech noticed that there was a 100% increase in Native American student enrollment. And those numbers you don't see fairly often in higher ed. So it got the attention of a lot of important people at Virginia Tech. Um, and it just so happened that I traveled with the chief of my tribe right at that time. He's currently the assistant chief of our tribe, Kenneth Adams.
What
And
is your, I'm sorry,
I'm
what is
sorry.
your tribe?
I was saying I was traveling to Virginia Tech with my assistant, or with the chief of the tribe at my time. His name is Kenneth Adams. He's currently the assistant chief, and he was asked to be the keynote presenter for American Indian Heritage Month. And so I was in Richmond at the time. My internship had ended, so I was actually kind of unemployed, still looking for employment. And I went with him for his presentation, and it was at his reception that I was able to speak with the vice president of diversity at that time, and he offered me a full-time position to continue that important work. So that after that first year, I was able to serve in a full-time capacity, bringing more leadership to the initiative and expanding our outreach efforts. And we just continue to saw like really great feedback from tribal leaders and from students. We were really in those first number of years just trying to build those relationships and make those connections. And I feel now that we really did make those connections, and it's now we're in that stage of like strengthening those relationships and expanding those outreach efforts. So coming back full circle, I actually had left Virginia Tech and moved to DC, and just last year I kind of came back to Virginia Tech, and I now serve in the admissions office as the tribal outreach liaison. And there's sort of been a new life breathed into the program with some new staff that have brought some fresh energy and some new perspectives. And we're continuing to go to all of the powwows, and we'll have a table there. You can see us at any of the Virginia powwows with the Virginia Tech table. We're now involving not just staff from Virginia Tech, but also current students, Native students at Virginia Tech, namely the Native Virginia Tech Student Organization. We have a lot of students that will help us out at those powwows and staffing those tables. We're also looking to, host virtual events, because that's one thing that's kind of presented a challenge this year is, with COVID-19, we kind of have to be creative and not losing sight of our goal of, strengthening those relationships with students and getting them the information they desire. So one event that we actually have coming up rather soon in October, on October 17th, is an event. It's a virtual event, and it's called Unpacking Admissions and Resources at Virginia Tech. And it's going to be on Zoom, and we'll have students and faculty from Virginia Tech. We'll have professors in neuroscience and American Indian Studies. We'll have Melissa from the American Indian and Indigenous Community Center. We'll have our current president at NAVE at VT. So a really great team here for this event to answer your questions and really give you a sense of all of the resources that are available to Native students at Virginia Tech. Apart from that, also because of COVID, we aren't really able to travel to all of the powwows because most of the powwows have been canceled this summer and for the fall, and we're not sure what next year is going to look like, but we still wanted to be able to have more events to offer to students. So we actually put together what we're calling virtual college tables, and we have those in mind to schedule on days that powwows have been canceled. So it's something for tribal leaders and students to do on a day that maybe a powwow has been canceled and they have some free time. We also have chosen dates where it's lined up specifically around deadlines with the Virginia Tech admissions application. So that was strategic in making sure that students have opportunities to get their questions answered throughout the entire admissions process. Apart from that, in my role as tribal outreach liaison, I'm also looking forward to hosting a conference on campus. It's still determined if it's to be determined if it's going to be virtual or in person, but at that conference, we're looking to bring in tribal leaders across from Virginia and connect them with Virginia Tech faculty and staff to assist and help with the challenges of the tribes recently becoming federally recognized, and for most of the tribes seeking to establish a tribal education department. So a lot of great, exciting things are happening for this upcoming year.
That is a lot. So thank you for doing that work. And I wonder, I know initially your internship ended, but what made you decide to come back and do this work?
Well, during that internship, I really did fall in love with recruiting and speaking and connecting with students. My major at Virginia Tech was marketing management, and I always appreciated the creative side of marketing. And I kind of saw how that internship, I was able to maybe apply my education and what I learned inside the classroom in a non-traditional way with that internship. And I had a full hand in marketing our presence at these powwows and making sure people knew that we were going to be there and scheduling those events, and also marketing the workshops that we were hosting at the tribal centers and making sure that students were aware and coming to those events. So during the internship, I just really did fall in love with the work, and never did I think I would end up working in higher education or admissions, but it seemed to fit like a glove. And I've been working in admissions and higher ed for almost 7 or 8 years at this point. And when you love something, you tend to stick with it.
And you are a member of a Virginia tribe as well, is that correct?
Yes, my tribe is the Upper Mattaponi tribe. It's located in King William, Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you, appreciate it. And I will turn it over to Melissa.
Wow, that was a lot of information, but I'm so excited to hear about all the things that admissions is doing. And I know I'm partnering to some degree with the October 17th event, but it was so great to hear about all the other things happening as well. So I have a question for Kaylin. I know that when you were a student here, you majored in agricultural sciences, as previously mentioned. Can you tell us about how your professional role now and how your educational background prepared you for that role?
Definitely. So indirectly, I'll say my background in agriculture, and more specifically, I guess, in leadership and education, gave me an advantage in making connections with peers, mentors, other industry professionals who have really invested in me and supported my growth in areas that I have limited knowledge. So for example, I don't have a meat science background, but by growing those relationships with folks, they have been, counseling me, mentoring me, and teaching me those different skill sets that I need to make my job all the better. I would also say that it's influenced me in a way that I didn't expect. So I'm able to make a lot of decisions on the front lines for the company, just at the most basic levels, just by knowing these folks and sharing with them how things are going on a day-to-day basis. So that's how I'd say it relates to me. My education relates to how and what I do today.
Thank you, Kaylin. And Kaylin also was one of the co-founders of the first Native at Virginia Tech powwow. And I wanted to hear a little bit about what that experience meant for you as a student.
Wow. So I guess as a student, unexpected. So it came up all of a sudden. It was something that I was definitely interested in. But being a part of that, I would say changed my life, changed what I wanted to do in my career, and has also helped me become a part of powwow that my tribal community hosts. So I'm from the Chickahominy Indian tribe. But I position really helped me to work with different folks. So not only was I working with students to get things done, I was also working with people all the way into the Office of Inclusion and Diversity in different parts of Virginia Tech. I was able to have communications. So that really, I would say, grew me as a student and also as a professional. And just being a part of that whole process and then just seeing it come to fruition was just amazing. I was so proud after that first powwow, just seeing all the folks that came out, whether they were actually there for the powwow or just, you know, walking by and happened to, you know, take a glimpse over and say, hey, you know, what are they doing out there? It really started a conversation on campus that, you know, hasn't been extinguished even today. It's just kind of recognized like, hey, we do have Native students on this campus. And even though some people may think that it's a thing of the past, like we're able to provide education to the community members and to Virginia Tech to just show that, hey, we have tribal communities that are still here and very well today.
Thank you. And I'll pass it back to LaTanya.
Thanks, Kaylin. You guys did an amazing job with the very first one. There's commentary all the time about how that did not seem like a first anything. So it's a great event. I hope it continues to grow. And then I'm gonna talk a little bit to Jason. Jason Chavez, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you, LaTanya?
I'm pretty good. And I know that you have gotten involved in politics, of course, with your major. That makes sense. And you're now working with the Arizona Secretary of State's office. And you've had several opportunities to come back and talk to college-age students about voting. And I know that you'll be giving a talk this month during Heritage Month on October 15th. So I want to ask, how was your education in political science? How has that served you professionally and personally? And in your time here as a student with campus transformation, you did a lot of work getting Indigenous Peoples Day passed here on campus. And so can you talk a little bit about how your degree helped with that? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. So first, thank you again, LaTanya and Melissa, for organizing this and giving us the opportunity to speak. You know, one of the most important things that I learned in the classroom, in political science classes from my professors was how citizens affect our political institutions, whether that's through advocacy, through the petition process, or whether it's through you know, passing laws or making administrative rules, right? So learning how government works and how it is affected by and for people was one of the most important things that I've learned. Using those lessons from inside the classroom with the American Indian and Indigenous community to advocate for Indigenous Peoples Day was certainly related to that. I couldn't have done that. We couldn't have done that without sort of knowing how bureaucratic university governance works. It's a process that is designed not to include the voices of students, and it's a process that's designed not to include the voices of marginalized students. So overcoming that initial barrier to even have the conversations about whether or not getting Indigenous Peoples Day acknowledged was possible was the first step. And I think it's incredibly important that we are represented in those places where those decisions are being made. So being able to sit down with campus administrators, with community leaders, was a bit scary, right? Because you don't know the language they're speaking, the language of government, whether it be academic or political government. Getting Indigenous Peoples Day acknowledged, passed by Virginia Tech's administration was something that took a lot of time and effort, and there was a lot of folks involved. But seeing it go through its different phases was incredibly rewarding. So I know that I and others that were really involved in this effort couldn't have done it without, you know, those that came before us, Rufus, Lee, Kaylin, and so many others who laid the groundwork to make that really possible. We couldn't have done it without that, without, you know, having a strong Native community, without, you know, Rufus, his name was, you know, always thrown around. He's a Virginia Tech institution in and of himself, being the first Monacan graduate. You know, when you say his name and people listen, right? Oh, Rufus is for this as well. Okay, sit down, let's talk. We couldn't have done it without Rufus. Lee creating Native at Virginia Tech, recruiting Native students to come to Virginia Tech. That community wouldn't have been there, wouldn't have grown to the point to where we could start to advocate for ourselves and advocate for something that was important to us without Lee's leadership there. And Kaylin, I mean, she got the first powwow off. That visibility that we finally had, right, at Virginia Tech in the Blacksburg, New River Valley community was so important because we needed that to get people passionate, get people involved in helping us with this. You know, there's so many others that were involved in this, and so many who were instrumental in getting Indigenous Peoples Day passed. It was definitely, like I said, a political process, but you know, it's so important that we have a seat at the table and we use our institutions, our political institutions, to work for us. And that was something that I learned from my peers, Kaylin, Rufus, Lee, and something that I learned from the classroom in political science.
Can all of you, if you'd like to chime in, tell me a little bit more about the significance of Indigenous Peoples Day to you?
Latanya, Jason, first off, man, you're entirely too complimentary of what I did. My major accomplishment at Virginia Tech was surviving and graduating. But you know, having that Indigenous Peoples Day specifically on campus is a huge deal. It is the equal of having the powwow that Kaylin and others were able to put on, because there is no substitute for that visibility. And for if you can take and capture someone who you know, really hasn't taken the time to get to know these marginalized communities, these Virginia Indian communities, and you get the ear of a faculty member, of a student that you know, prior to that had no idea that we existed. And you know, so there's just no substitute for being able to get your message out there, to educate folks, because that's when you can really start having those follow-up conversations, right? And that's what, you know, Jason was really getting at, is the layering, the stacking on, the taking, you know, passing the torch and the next person doing a little bit more than you did. And so, you know, that's where the powwow helped, you know, the Indigenous Peoples Day. Now that we have Indigenous Peoples Day, we need to take advantage of those moments and that time that we have in front of people to talk about the next thing. And because there's always going to be a next thing. And so that's where it's really a big deal, that recognition of us as a community on a campus that, you know, not so long ago wasn't welcoming to the Virginia Indian community.
Thank you, guys. Does anybody else have any thing they want to add in terms of the recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day?
Hey, Melissa. So I was just going to say to Rufus's point on the building, on the flip side, not just getting visibility for folks, I would say on campus and within the realm of education, but also getting visibility throughout the tribes. So once Indigenous Peoples Day, you know, it became a huge deal. It was in papers, and you know, people were saying, "Hey, can I get this paper?" I would say a lot of the students from the tribal communities were really excited about, you know, hey, I can get to this school and they know, you know, what Indigenous people are, and they're excited about having us on campus, and we can actually have a voice there. So completely agree with Rufus, but also would add to that that, you know, for the tribal communities, it was a big deal. And I guess more specifically to the high school students looking to be college students soon. We're really excited to see that groundwork had been laid. So when they got there, they had a place to call home. They had a community already.
And now your little brother has joined Hokie Nation.
Yes, he has.
We're excited to have him. I'm going to go back to Rufus for a minute. As Jason mentioned, when your name is mentioned, we know you're the first Monacan student to graduate from Tech. It's interesting to think about that, though, because that was 2007, and we're at a land-grant institution situated on Monacan Tutelo land. You've been involved in each year's powwow, and we consider you a partner and a founder as well, because we couldn't have accomplished that without your guidance throughout that process, getting the first one started. And so everybody's kind of talked a little bit about the different ways in which visibility has been increased for Native students. But in your current role, you're working directly with tribal communities. What are the ways that you think as an institution we can strengthen the relationship and support of our tribal communities in the state? Or what words of advice would you give those faculty that are doing that work here to build tribal outreach?
Sure. I'll tell a quick story that all of you guys have, of course, heard, but on the chance that folks that end up watching this have it, about the importance of, or how important just a personal touch from a faculty member can be. You know, I don't come from a family that had generational education. You know, one generation before me went to the Monacan Indian Mission School, and it only went to the 6th grade. So I'm literally a generation removed from that. And so my path to Virginia Tech is really through Dr. Cook, through Sam Cook. And if he had not taken a personal interest in me as a human being, as a young teenager, and said, "Hey, Rufus, have you taken the SATs? Hey, Rufus, this is the deadline." You know, Lee mentioned that earlier about, you know, focusing events and things around deadlines. Because I didn't come from a community where there was anyone else that could say, "Hey, have you done this?" They didn't have that background. So it was super important that someone like Sam took a personal interest in me and helped walk me through what I needed to do, right, to even get in the door. And so, you know, we don't want to lose sight of that. We've made a ton of strides. We're having these great events at powwows. One of the things I'd like to see is, you know, we've got to figure out a better way to reach the non-powwow tribal members, right? So we've got a really good established presence at powwows, but how do we get to the events? You know, almost all these tribes have some type of homecoming type event at some point during the year. And how do we get to those events where we're capturing tribal members that aren't necessarily involved with the powwow culture? The other thing with the tribes being fairly recognized now and having, you know, starting to build their own capacity, the land-grant universities in Virginia have a real opportunity to step in and provide real services in a pipeline for folks. And so that's what, you know, I had no idea that's the way it would work out. You know, I got a history degree and floated around, and I did a lot of random things for years before I fell into the roles that I now have and have served under with the tribal governments in Virginia. But you know, now that we know that that need will always exist for each of the 7 federal recognized tribes, you know, the recruitment, you can go into these communities and say, hey, you're going to need people that can write policy, right? You're going to need folks that, you know, have a specific background in tourism. You're going to need folks to do, you know, any number of things, because now all those options are on the table for tribes to self-determine and to be sovereign nations and to do those things themselves. They would like to do it with their own Virginia Indian community. Someone who works in this area, I would just tell you that a lot of these tribes, they just don't have the internal capacity to fill those type of positions right now. And so that's where Virginia Tech can really step in that void to, you know, use their expertise today to help those tribes get where they need to go. And then also have a long-term plan to say, let's recruit people from your community. Let's say to them and have a plan for them working with the tribe and say, we want you to have these skills. We want you to be involved with these things, have this degree at the end, and you're going to have a tribal position waiting for you when you're done. So you're going to get to go home and do the work specific to your education. And that's something that still doesn't necessarily exist yet, right? And so I think, and that's a big part of the conversation about, you know, indigenous and native communities and young people. That's one of the hurdles we still have to overcome is, what do we do once we're educated and we feel like we can't go home, right? If you're from these rural communities where there's not the job opportunity there, and then you're having to just make a decision of how best to stay involved with your own community and fulfill what you feel like your career path may be. And I think we can make all these things go in the same direction. And I think that's where we're at now, which is super exciting. And so I think that's where Virginia Tech can really step in and say, hey, we're going to provide expertise now, and we're going to make a pipeline to get your own people coming right back to you. They get to come home and get to grow the capacity of the tribes. And I think that's where we're at, and that's where we need to go.
See everybody nodding their heads. I do have a question for everyone, and that is, I know Jason and Kaylin in particular, I worked with you as students, and Lee, when you first came into the role with admissions, I know I traveled with you and Alicia to several powwows, and now you're alumni, and all of you in some way have participated in helping build an alumni connection, alumni society, and Native and Indigenous Alumni Society. Even as students, Kaylin and Jason worked really hard in trying to develop a strategy that would get alumni connected, along with Melissa. And Lee, you came out to one of our events it's 2 years ago now, and offered to volunteer. And so can you talk a little bit about why you felt that was important as alumni, and how has that changed or not changed now that you're a little bit out?
Yeah, I would say for myself, I was kind of in a unique position because Virginia Tech was also my employer. It was the first job that I received after I graduated. So it wasn't just, you know, my undergraduate experience, but my, you know, first young professional experience. So I have really strong ties to Virginia Tech. So I'd worked for Virginia Tech with that first position for a number of years, and then made the choice to try out some new experiences and move to Washington, D.C. And so when I was contacted by you, Latanya, for opportunities to give back as an alum, I saw it as a way to just stay connected to my alma mater and to the Native community at Tech. I wanted to see that it was still thriving, and, you know, give back in any way that I can. I was curious to see, you know, what the current students at Virginia Tech had been doing and what projects they had been working on. So it was also just something that I was excited to know about, So I guess curiosity and strong ties to tech always brought me back.
Anybody else have thoughts on that?
Hey, Latanya. So for me, I think more than anything, it was just wanting to be a resource for future students and just still wanting to be a connection, have a connection to Virginia Tech because of that. So Melissa mentioned my brother just came to Tech. So kind of like Rufus, really didn't have many family members to go to school and to go through that whole admissions process. So just wanted to stay connected to Virginia Tech, to the Alumni Association, just to be a resource to the Native students looking to come in, looking for maybe someone to help mentor them through that process and to just streamline that process a little bit better for them.
So something that I think as Indigenous people, as Native Americans, something that sets us apart from other communities, and maybe it doesn't set us apart, but something that is really notable is how important community is in each of our cultures. It's our way of life. For me, I would say it's my O'odham Himmedag. It's my way of life. It's something that has been ingrained in me to look to my elders, to look to those that have come before me to teach me, right? As a student, that was something that I looked to. And I mean this in the sort of nicest possible way, but I looked to my elders, Rufus, Lee, and Kaylin, right? My sort of young elders, if you will, to teach me. And I think, you know, because our community is so small at Virginia Tech, because compared to other ethnic groups, racial groups, the American Indian and Indigenous community doesn't have as many graduates as the majority community or others. So I think that's incredibly important for us as Native alumni from Virginia Tech to be there to support those that are coming after us, because, you know, like Rufus mentioned earlier, they're building off of the things that we've done, and of course we want nothing but the best for them, but I think it's important that we're also there to let them know that, yeah, we know what you went through as well, and you're doing great.
And I agree with what everybody else has said. You know, you have a connection to the university, of course. Anyway, and it's a special place for all of us, you know, of course. But you also have this sense of responsibility, you know, to reach back and to help. You know, a lot of these great organizations and great work that the other panelists have done, you know, since I was at Virginia Tech, I wish I had. And so, you know, I make sure that now I reach back and offer, you know, myself in any way that I can be helpful to make sure that that keeps going. Because I think that is something unique to sometimes universities is you don't want to end up in a situation where you have an awesome 4 years and then that cohort graduates and goes on and then everything that has been done gets undone. And so I think we all have a real responsibility to reach back. And then just the basics of, as Jason mentioned, our culture, you know, the terminology I was raised with is that you don't own your blessings, you just hold them for a little while and then you give them to someone else. And that is the way I view, you know, my responsibility to the upcoming students or the students that are already there. You know, I was blessed to graduate from Virginia Tech. And now I'll do whatever I have to do to help someone else do the same.
I love that way you put it. One other question. Well, actually, let me turn it over to Melissa.
Thank you, guys. Last but not least, this is for all of you as well in any order. what is the biggest piece of advice that you would share with our student community? What do you wish you would have known or spent more time engaging in?
Melissa, I have been waiting for this question all day. So, I guess my biggest piece of advice to incoming students, current students, people who have only got a little bit of time left is don't limit yourself. Don't limit yourself to a certain amount of classes. Don't limit yourself to just Virginia Tech. So travel, study abroad, go to different events that aren't necessarily just your community. Learn about different cultures, learn about, different aspects of different people's lives that are different than you. So one of the things that I really wish, I guess I would have been pushed to or just pursued more are just all of the grants, scholarships, and all of that that's out there. So, they always say, you don't have the time back, and that's so true. And I've learned how true that is. I guess over the past couple of years, you have this time, this special time, whether it be 3, whether it be 6 years that you have at Virginia Tech or, any other campus, just to study, to learn, to just find yourself, to find the things that you enjoy and to grow yourself. So don't be limited by money. I know that was, a limited factor for me. And I just think that looking back, I could have applied for more scholarships, more grants. I could have taken out a loan, but, and paid that back, but, you just don't get that time back. So that would be my biggest piece of advice is don't limit yourself. And then also to step outside your comfort zone so you can grow more as an individual.
Anybody else have thoughts?
Yeah, I would just, in some ways, piggyback on that and say, make Virginia Tech work for you. Do what get out of Virginia Tech what you need to get out of Virginia Tech. Don't get too caught up in these, pre-laid out plans, because it's going to change. And I think that's what we can all, kind of attest to that we're all doing stuff that we might not have thought we were going to be doing 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or longer than that for me. There's no way to know where you'll end up, so, sweating that day-to-day part of it and really stressing out of it. I would suggest try not to do that. Make it work for you. Do the things that you're truly interested in, because you're going to find yourself continuing to go back to those things once you leave Virginia Tech. And then find your community there. And if that's Native at VT, great, because that's why it exists. We want you to reach out to Native at VT and Melissa and Latanya and folks that are there to help you. But if it's not, don't worry about that either. Find your community there, find the people that are interested in you as a human being, and are going to, drive you to the goals that you need to get to. And then don't hesitate to reach out. I think about it all the time. I'm not a shy person, but I didn't, the resources weren't there and as obvious as they are now. That is true. But I also could have done more myself to reach out to people that would have helped me. And I just kind of took it on the chin over and over again until I figured it out. And there's too many resources now to do that to yourself. If you have questions about anything, there's someone there that can help you. Please reach out to someone from anything from figuring out how to get your schedule the way you need it to be, or your plan for your major. There are resources there now. Please reach out to someone that will help you.
Yeah, and I guess I'll piggyback off what Rufus said. When we were prospective students, there wasn't a tribal outreach liaison in the admissions office, and there wasn't, when I was a student before it started, there wasn't a Native at Virginia Tech student group, and there definitely wasn't the American Indian and Indigenous Community Center. And I think that's really powerful if you are a prospective student if you're not able to come to campus, to check out online the American Indian and Indigenous Community Center, because this is like a second home for a lot of Native students. It's a safe space. You know, we have gifts from the Virginia tribes that are shared there in this home. You have Melissa there, who is phenomenal. So, you know, I think it's important to, if you don't take advantage of your resources, just to kind of push yourself to do so, because you guys have it better than we did. Just kidding. But it's you know, it's just really great to see all of the staff and resources that are available to you, beginning even now while you're in high school. So yeah, definitely, like Rufus was saying, take advantage of that.
I'll just add, for students, don't compare yourself to others, because you'll burn out really quick. No path, laid out path, as Rufus said, is going to work for everyone. I'm a non-traditional student, probably as non-traditional as they get, right? My undergrad took me 10 years. It was a process, and a lot of that time was spent comparing myself to others, and you know, that didn't work for me. But the path that I ultimately did take worked for me, and it worked for me really well. You have to find what fits for you. And similarly, I'd say find a mentor. That was probably the most important thing that I learned from Virginia Tech. Like Rufus, I too owe my time at Virginia Tech to Dr. Sam Cook. When I applied to Virginia Tech, I almost didn't get in. Like I said, my undergrad took me 10 years, and that's because I failed and dropped out my first couple of years. I had a very low GPA. School was not a place that I wanted to be. When I finally decided to return to school and had improved my grades, and found out that, you know, a university was a place that I really wanted to be in, it was too late. My GPA, my academic resume had already been damaged so much. Dr. Sam Cook reached out to admissions, and he, you know, really helped me. He really went to bat for me. Hey, this is a good student. I know Jason. He's going to do well here. And I think I did pretty well at Virginia Tech. Find yourself a mentor, because you're going to need them. And you have a lot to learn from them. So yeah, President Sands, if you're watching, Sam Cook in sociology, give him a raise.
Melissa, actually, before we go, I want to ask you the question I asked before in terms of connecting with alumni. How would you want alumni to be connected? Because you've done a lot of work. We've partnered a lot on getting alumni connected back to Virginia Tech, Native alumni in particular.
There are a couple ways that come to mind that I think would serve current students and prospective students. Some of them which our amazing alum have already attested to. One of those is mentorship. LaTanya and I are working to establish a mentorship program. And so if there's Native alumni that are interested in reaching back, that can connect with students in similar career paths, I think that mentorship is just so invaluable. So that's one way. Another way is just staying connected in community, giving back through volunteering. We have 2 huge events now that occur throughout the academic year that are a great way for faculty or for alumni to come back and re-engage, and that's Powwow. Kaylin comes back for Powwow and is like hands in, all hands on deck, just as when she was a student. So that's another way. We now have Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a day-long programming event. While we're virtual this year, it's usually on campus. So I think volunteering is another way, just engaging with students and giving your time. And then, of course, we always hate to make the monetary statements, but it's not always money specifically. The center, Lee mentioned the items in the center and the cultural representation in the center. If you have donations that you want to contribute to the center, whether it's things on Virginia Indian history, material culture, anything that could support the center ends up supporting students. One thing that I'm trying to get off the ground is an emergency fund for students through the center, so that I could immediately make decisions about assisting students with rent or food insecurities or things of that nature. So we're really trying to develop an emergency fund out of the center. So these are just a couple of ideas of ways that alumni could give back or be engaged.
Thank you. I want to ask, is there anything that you wanted to say that we didn't ask you? No parting words for our students, alumni, faculty, staff, senior administration? All right, I'll take that as a no. But I really appreciate all of you have left Virginia Tech, and you've left it better than it was when you arrived. And so I cannot state how important the work you've done is, and I know that you will continue to do great work in each of your areas. So I appreciate you taking the time to speak today, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you, Latanya.
Thank you guys
Melissa.
for putting this together.
Okay, I think we're done.